All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk, episode 28. We are one day before April Fools, and I have got so much to share. Took a couple days off. Told you guys at the end of last Monday's Coffee Talk that it was spring break. Most of us were all gone. Melanie was in Europe. Everyone was running around. I was going to take a few days and kind of disappear and go on some football tours. Going to share a little bit of that information at the end. And I have come back. And then, you do the email catch up thing where usually there's a punishment of taking vacation and then you get really behind. But so I got up early, very early this morning, started going through all of my emails, and I am over the moon. It's going to be one of the best Mondays I've had in a very, very long time. And I will, I'm so excited to share this. But half the stuff I'm going to share with you on today, you are going to think it's April Fool's. You're going to think I've made it up. So I am sharing the documents so that you can see them. So if you're listening on an audio version, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, whatever, make sure you get the video version of this. You are going to want to see all of these supporting documents and evidence that we're going to cover today. Lots of things to talk about. I'm going to go a little bit on a rant. I'm going to, I got a lot to say about women in the collision repair industry. So that's probably my rant today, but we have a lot of technical stuff. And then I'll go on another rant again because Aztec just can't stay out of it. At some point, sheesh, right? Like I feel like, like shush, like why you keep talking. But we'll talk about what they said last week while I was gone. And then we're going to talk about a little bit more about adjuster unauthorized practice of law. We had covered that the last month in our insurance and customer relations group. And I think it's like, when you buy a car, right? You pick out a car and you pick out a color and you think, this is so great. It's so unique. I'm gonna be the only one. And then as soon as you buy that car and you start driving around town, you see it everywhere. You never saw it before, and then you see it now. And that's just how your brain does bias, and what it sees and what it filters and then what you recognize. But um, but there, yeah, just yeah. So let's just do this, right? Let's just get right into this one. It's gonna be, I got a lot to cover, and I can't wait to get to this one in real life off of Coffee Talk. All right, we got a stolen total loss. Whew, okay. When 46 to 47% of reported claims become a total loss, right? If you are a body shop, they must become a revenue source. Like this isn't negotiable. I believe that you will see a lot of body shops over the next couple of years cease and desist on DRPs because of this issue alone. Um, DRPs, you can't not make money on total losses. Right now, you're not making enough money on the repairables. You damn sure can't like lose another 20% of your current revenue to total losses that you are handling. You'll have to have staff to do all of the admin on all these total losses for all these insurance companies, but get nothing out of it. So you may see insurance companies go back to having a better set of better fee schedule for total losses instead of just thinking those things should be free. But we got a stolen one. Hey, this isn't new. So I get these calls all the time. People are like, you're not going to believe what happens. I bet you've never heard of this. And I go, yep, heard of it. Happens all the time. What's great about this one is that the shop basically gets a ding on their phone after hours that there's motion on their security cameras at the shop, and they pull up the camera, and here is a towing company moving around other vehicles to navigate to get to the vehicle, and they're snatching it. They throw it on the truck and run off with it. That no keys, no nothing. So come on, you knew you weren't supposed to be there. You knew you didn't have permission to get that car. I don't care what the tow truck driver's story is going to be when this all comes down. But then I also can't believe no insurance company. Well, maybe I guess anything could happen. These adjusters are getting a little crazy these days. But typically, if I make an assignment to one of the two major salvage companies, I still can't believe this happened, that anybody went out there. And so I can't wait. But now the car has been snatched. There was significant fees owed on the car. I did ask, any chance this was a repo? Nope, paid for by cash. The vehicle's owned by a corporation. So this one's going to get really good. Now the shop gets to report it as stolen. They got some paperwork to fill out. And then the police get to go after the insurance company and start running down the who sent you for this, and and what happened. And I'll tell you this. This would be new, right? So if this is an adjuster that didn't go through one of the total loss processing people and called let's just say a reclaim company on their own and dispatched them to go get the car, um, like because they had title, like let's say it's one of these ones where you pay for the car and you take the title, which is what we're going to talk about as well. But that would be new. An adjuster that thought that they could just circumvent all of the handling procedures, send a rogue guy out to grab the car from the body shop. That one would surprise me, right? That would be a first time. I've never had it. It's usually miscommunication and kind of thing, but stolen cars and total losses. But I just started to let you know, hey shops, if you've got charges on cars, please make sure they're secure. And make sure that your communication process is is repetitive and documented in writing and all of the things that you need to do, because yeah, they'll come and steal a car these days on the lot. So all right, so let's talk about another problem with total losses. So I've been teaching Replevin for probably as part of my total loss class. You can buy that total loss class on the website. I think it's awesome. I think if you're going to get taught how to handle total losses, you should probably get taught by somebody that's done it for a living, done it on the other side of the fence, understands all of the rules and laws and problems and coincident things that can happen on those. You should probably not take total loss training from somebody that works from a paint company. I don't know what a paint company person has anything to say or teach or do about total losses, but that, especially if someone's going to try to teach you Replevin. I've seen some presentations lately where I guess I used to teach when I started teaching Replevin 6 years ago. I thought it was stupid, and had a lot to say about it. Now I see them teaching it as well. But State Farm's back to Replevin in a large format. So I came back this week to a shop that sent me a package of getting served on a Replevin case from State Farm. And because it popped up and I thought, man, let's just see it and let people see what this looks like. If you've never heard the word Replevin before, a lot of shops think that, the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules. So a lot of people think that if you're in possession of the car, nothing leaves till I get paid. And you think the possession of that property is your bargaining chip, and some of you are experiencing abandonment or you're experiencing Replevin right now. So let's just jump right into it. This is December 4th. State Farm states in a December 4th communication to the body shop, which we'll talk about that a little later. The claim got reported on November 19th. They got an estimate that ruled the vehicle a total loss on November 22nd. Obviously, there was a communication of what the fees are, because the adjuster cannot respond to the fees if there was no presentation of the fees. So somewhere before December 4th, fees had to be presented on this car. State Farm is basically only offering to pay $3,169.20. I can tell you the shop's fees were at this time somewhere around in the $6,000 range. Here's where the adjuster goes too far. And a good lesson for shops, because here's where you go too far typically, is you add to it. I'm the same. Like I can talk to a wall for 10 hours, right? To do a podcast, I flip on a camera and talk to my screen and pretend you guys are all out there in an audience listening to me, but I can talk for hours. But when it comes to communication written that will possibly be used against you in a court of law, like I always like to say, the simpler you are, and the less that you leave open to either being wrong or misinterpretation or whatever, the better you are. So here's where the adjuster missed. You could just say, we offer to pay $3,169 in return for the release of the vehicle. Boom. And you say, after this day, additional fees after 12/6/2024 will not be paid. Okay. Mitigation is a part of a claim. Mitigation is a duty and an expectation to the party of the loss, but a body shop is never a party to the loss. So sending a body shop a letter that says what you're not going to pay for after a certain date is pointless, because technically you're not the customer as the insurer anyway. And if you don't give notification to the policyholder or to the third party that's part of that, like the person that's a part of that claim, the person that you actually have this relationship with, that's who has to get served notice. So clearly training is a lost art. If we're honest, most of the people in the total loss departments aren't the brightest bulbs on the tree. We've also historically outsourced the total loss department. You've had IAs a lot of IAs who it's their very first assignment ever. Like they studied, it took them 6 times to pass the test to get a license, which that's ridiculous. But but they get their first assignment and I'm going to the total loss unit in Bakersfield, California or whatever. And you're like, okay, good luck. Because we thought that there was really not a whole lot of damage you could do there, but that was when very low percentage of reported claims were actually total losses. And now that whole department, that was almost like kind of like Lord of the Flies over there. They were they kind of had to do what they wanted for so long without any real training, management, leadership, legal supervision, etc. And so they're all kind of making up their own rules. It's going to get interesting. Okay, but the adjuster goes on and says a little bit too much. Basically, we're not paying for these miscellaneous fees that include such things as photos and deleting customers' information from the vehicle. And for all further, this is where I love it, they get it in caps. For all further communications needs to be through call because the body shop is charging us for emails. All right. So that's December 4th. State Farm makes an offer of $31.69. Now, if we look at the shop's fees, that's a $3,193 dollar difference between what the shop said the fees are and what the insurer is willing to pay. Pay attention to that date. It is December 4th, right? Okay. Part two, or duh, so to speak. Okay. Now, December 9th. First letter is dated December 4th. Second letter is dated December 9th. This letter is to follow up in regards to the cost of the associated VIN number, blah. This one sounds a little bit more legal, right? Like the first one sounds like an adjuster that's just like, hey. And then just a few days later, you get another response. Your fees had, I mean, it's not like you went and rewrote your fees or whatever. The only thing really that would have changed was being additional storage dates, right? But on that previous one, they told you that they weren't going to pay for anything until after December 6th, right? So 3 days goes past after their deadline. They send this new one that says, hey, we're going to be very professional and very smart because in the first letter we weren't, right? And says that we received on December 5th a breakdown of charges totaling $6,362.28. Then how did you respond to me on the 4th with what you were willing to pay if you didn't get the fees till the 5th? So this, when this one popped in, the body shop should have been going, okay, red flag, something's about to happen. So I would have loved to have heard from this one right then, because all the flags are showing that this one's about to go sideways. And then they now offer to pay $4,210.20. So who reviewed this between the 4th and the 9th and added all this additional money? So now we're at a $2,152 difference between what the shop wanted and what the charges were. Now I want you to really think about that. We are $2,152, that's $2,000. I'm a big insurance company. I've got $2,000 difference between what the shop wants and what I say I'm willing to pay. I'm not real sure where the math is, but I can't believe that this claim came to a manager's desk and they went this way. Because I know State Farm's using some cheap attorneys these days, right? But the attorneys used to be $300-400 an hour, and I'm like, man, just by the time they finish the first phone call with me, I'm going to be $1,000 into this thing, right? So they make an offer of settlement. Says we don't hear back from you by December 13th. We may seek to enforce other legal remedies. Okay, so on December 9th of 2024, the body shop was basically told Replevin is coming. Hopefully, we would have made some moves, maybe applied for a lien on the title. There's a lot of other things. Larry likes to get liens all the time. I'm kind of like, let's wait and see. But sometimes his way ends up being, you always say if it goes right, it goes right. But when it hits the fan, you really wish you would have done X and you don't have time to do that. All right. So December 9th, guys got that date? All right. So now last week while I'm on spring break, shop gets served. Replevin. So here it is, State Farm Mutual versus Auto Body. And it is a verified complaint for Replevin, which basically means State Farm went to the court, made a case for why they believe that this property should be returned to them and that the body shop should not be allowed to keep it and that we should not have to pay them what the body shop wants. This is typically what a Replevin looks like. First, you have to establish the ownership of the property and the ability to return it. So they go through all that. But here's where it gets really good, because part of filing is you have your basically like the pleading, like this is where I say, and this is what I say the law says, and this is why I believe I'm owed these things. And then you have to give some exhibits. They don't send in the 12-4 letter. So when you look at the 3 exhibits that State Farm puts as part of this thing, they pretend as though the December 4th email never happened whatsoever. So you can say they say on or about December 2nd, State Farm paid $20, $912.66. So they're alleging that 2 days before they sent an email to the shop to say we offer to pay this, the first one that had the all caps and everything, that they paid, issued draft and payment to the customer for the ACV of $20,912. So on December 2nd, I say I pay for it. December 4th, I send a shop an email that says, this is what we're willing to pay. They give a breakdown of what they said they paid, what the lien payment was to pay it off, and then how much money went to the customer. And then it says, I thought this was interesting. I thought I would share it with you, that State Farm determined the actual cash value of the pickup of the GMC by looking up in a guide published by CCC Intelligent Solutions. Any of you aware of a guide? Like CCC doesn't make like an NADA book kind of style thing. So I would venture to say that this wasn't a guide. This was an evaluation report, which that's going to be interesting to have that. I thought that was cool. And then it says, as a matter of law, based on its total loss payments to the customer and the lien holder on December 2nd, State Farm is alleging they own the property. So they're saying on December 2nd, we paid for it. It's our property. We are owed it, and that the shop's possession of it is actually impeding them. Now, when they break down, here's where it gets fun because we have their exhibits. They say on December 5th, the shop sent a bill and demanded 6228. We know that's not true, right? So if I'm going to get my first email, I mean, we got to think about the ways. This is why adjusters never lie, never, ever, ever, ever lie, because the claim, the computer, the software, the claim management software will tell on you in a heartbeat. All right. Even if you don't ever put a log note in, there is this whole thing in the background that's telling me every sign-on ID that accessed that file for the time, for how long it was open before they closed it and went out to another file. There's all of these footprints in the back, and we're going to use them against you, right? That's where it is. So lying as the adjuster, the adjuster lied when they explained this to the manager, or the manager lied to the attorney before this was filed. So somebody has intentionally eliminated information to try to make them look as best as possible. So if we know if a shop sent their charges in on, December 1st, how many days does it take them before they even actually look at them? They already said that the claim got reported on X, but we didn't do an estimate until X. We got your estimate, as they talk through here, that they got the shop's estimate, but then it took them like 7 or 8 days before they reviewed it. So there's no way that on December 2nd, State Farm spontaneously decided to just pay the total loss to the customer and had no idea that this shop was going to send in a demand until December 5th, which is why they have eliminated the December 4th email. So kudos to the shop for having kept the mail, to keep all those attachments, to have a way of keeping track of everything so that they have this information. So it says on December 5th, we got a demand for $66,362.28. It put it in as Exhibit 2. Exhibit 1's the estimate that showed the total loss, and they talk about how long it took them to find it. And then it says on December 9th, so they're making it seem as though, well, we just got this demand on December 5th, and we took 4 days to respond. So on December 9th, we sent a letter disputing the charges. Well, that one sounds really nice and professional, right? That December 9th letter doesn't look like a really angry kid in pajamas clutching a security plushie wrote an email in their stall or their headset or at home in their living room. If they were working, this is why I don't like people working from home. You should probably ask a question before you hit send on something. But it basically makes them look all nice, right? I can't wait. I can't wait to bring up the December 5th email. We're just going to hold that one, right? But it basically says this is that they're not entitled to these fees. The shop's not entitled to anything. Now, the other part that I want you to pay attention to, so kind of a sidebar. When an insurer goes and starts to go after something, it behooves them to not just say, we don't think the charges are fair. It behooves them to try to go look at as many things as they can throw, right? So it's like a kitchen sink thing. I'm going to throw 6 or 7 things in there. You're going to come back and you're going to have to respond to all of them. We don't think we owe it. And then they start citing. So we talk all the time about all of you have laws in your state that pertain to automotive repair businesses. So some of you shops get so caught up in what you think legally an insurer has to do or an insurer has to pay for or whatever, and you're not even aware of the laws that govern you. So every state, you have a group of laws that says what an automotive repair business under consumer protection laws has to do. And I find it interesting that they went there and they threw about 5 different things on here. So basically, under the Automobile Act of this state, you have to have an odometer reading. So every estimate you write has to have the odometer. So you'll hear Larry talk about it all the time. You got to have odometer in, you have to have the mileage in, you have to have the mileage out, you have to have license plates. There's all these little rules that are supposed to be on your estimate. So all of you estimators that think that that's crap, that those are the things that you only get when a vehicle's a total loss and that it doesn't matter because you're fixing it or whatever. Every little detail matters. The details matter. Like anybody can do the big rock easy stuff. The details matter. And so they mention in here that because the shop also, hey, we don't like your fees, but also because there's a couple of things under the automotive repair statutes in the state that you didn't do, we think that that further means that you're not allowed to charge anything. So Replevin gets kind of interesting. In other words, State Farm has now said that we own the vehicle. We paid for it before the shop sent charges in. We didn't agree to those charges because we're the owner of the vehicle. We didn't sign on a contract. We didn't agree to them. There's nothing that says that the shop should charge us these things. And so we want the court to force the shop to give us the damaged vehicle and us not have to pay them a thing. That's what Replevin is. It basically, the chattel, as it is referred to all the time, it gives that person back the use of the property while you settle the legal dispute on what's owed for the property. So interesting. But here's the great thing, and this is why I always say the only thing we were all ever scared of was Erica Eversman. So, Erica has been through this. This is not her first rodeo. Replevin was huge 20-something years ago. It was a great tool to use to get property back. And over the course of those cases, Erica learned a thing or two. It's kind of like the farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two, right? And if you use the contract, so we have that on our website, you can buy the contract forms. We tell every body shop, you cannot have an authorization to pay, an authorization to repair, and a direction to pay. Those were 2 insurance company forms that were made for DRPs. And I know shops got them and thought, oh, this is great. If I got to have them sign them on the DRP, I'll just have them sign them on everything. You need a services agreement, a contract that explains the duties of you as a shop and the consumer as the vehicle owner, so that when things like this happen, it doesn't go sideways. So if you're using Erica's contract package, paragraph 6 addresses Replevin. So she is so aware that insurance companies do this, and it is a tactic to pay for the car and then come back and go, we didn't agree to these fees, but we own the car. Hey, we're entitled to get that car. So she put it in her contract. Paragraph 6 just basically says the customer agrees that the repair facility shall have a lien on the vehicle for any and all amounts identified in section 2. And that the customer agrees to pay any and all cost of expenses, including reasonable attorney fees, the repair facility incurs relating to any action of Replevin, including any action by an insurer if the customer transfers title and ownership of the vehicle. Remember when you talk about, as a fiduciary, my job is to take care of the customer and their interest and their financial interest way before mine. So remember we went back and said, basically, State Farm had offered to settle this for like $2,000 difference between what the shop wanted and what they wanted to pay. They went and filed suit and have now put paragraph 6 into play where the customer's got to pay for it. So all the money the shop's about to spend with an attorney to go through Replevin, the customer is now legally obligated to reimburse the shop for it. Now, if I'm sitting in my chair at home office, do I want to do I want to do that to a customer, period? Anyway, no. And then number two, would I want to do that and expose them so that it then may come back to me as bad faith, considering I've lied in my pleading? Like I've withheld information that should clearly, and it will probably show as very clearly in the file. Like, we wanted to put our best foot forward, and after I talked to my boss, they told me that that first email I wrote wasn't very professional, so I should send another one like 5 days later. um, that's a big exposure. And so these things are happening. Like I think as shops, it's important that you understand what these things are. You're going to have to hire attorneys. You're going to have to do things. You can't just eat it. You can't have all this time and energy. Plus the cost. I mean, like, having a vehicle on your lot costs you money. You have to have garage keepers, and you have exposure, and you have all these things. So you don't just store vehicles for free. And then you have phone calls, and you have to answer questions, and you have to do paperwork and all that stuff. You don't do all that stuff for free either. So these vehicles cost you something. There is a cost to that. There's a hard cost and materials and cleanup from where they leak, and then there's a non-hard, like I would say, like labor cost of your people and answering the phones and doing all those things. So um, you're going to see more of this as total losses. For insurers, we used to go, look, they're not the biggest part. Like, most of our money's over here, right? Um, that's why we had what we would have considered some of the lower performers of the claims department working on those total losses, or we outsourced those to IAs, but we didn't do the others, right? Um, Now sometimes maybe the IA is a little bit better of an option, but it wasn't that we didn't spend a lot of time on it. Insurers are going to they're going to spend more time worrying about what they're spending on total losses, as that becomes more a part of their severity and their overall financial health. And then you, as repairers, are going to have to spend time educating yourself. Like, it really isn't as simple as, well, if I got the car, somebody has to pay me until, or I'm not releasing the car. There's a legal way for me to come get that car and take it away from you. If you don't have the right paperwork, if you haven't been doing the right communications and documenting things, it's going to be very hard for you to respond to this summons and this suit. When you get it, you'll just be doing well, that's not what happened when we talked on the phone. I can't do that. I can't go in and help your attorney understand that, well, that's not what they said, right? Like, that's not documented. Your version of a phone call in your replay brain is not that. So it's interesting to see this picking up. I think last year I had like 4 or 5 shops reach out about getting served papers. Now I'm averaging like about one a week. So I think somewhere in some total loss department somewhere, someone decided that this was a good idea. I always say there's nothing new under the sun in claims. No one comes up with a bright new idea. It's just sometimes because these people don't have experience to reference the history, they think they've got a bright idea, and there's no one left to go, no, 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 we tried that 20 years ago and it went wrong. We are going to talk in the upcoming customer and insurer relations class this April. I'm going to break down some total loss, like this case, some cases that were lost on abandoning. So what happens for Replevin? What do you do about abandoning them? What do you do when they say they're taking the fees out of the customer's car? Like some things that we as shops have to do that can help the consumer. It's not our fight, right? I don't legally have a dog in this fight. Now, once Replevin comes, I kind of do at that point. But a lot of this stuff is between the customer and the insurer. But there's documentation things that we can do that help them. Like, the better documentation trail we have. Like this shop having that December 4th email, right? Like, and being able to go, no, 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 here's the real thing, and here's the email. Super duper helpful. Most of the attorneys I deal with, particularly the ones used to be really expensive attorneys, the insurers have started hiring less expensive, we'll just say less expensive attorneys, who don't understand this industry at all. And that's nothing new. There's so many people that don't. But they honestly believe that you guys have like a crown and a piece of paper, and you're just, kind of standing around, um, being cavemen, and they're really thinking that you're not going to have any documentation or anything, that you're going to come to the table with, well, we talked on the phone and said this, right? I really enjoy it when they are surprised at how much documentation you guys have. So up that game. If you've never taken the total loss class, by all means, I think you should. There's a total loss class, and then there's a total loss bundle you can buy. And if you buy the bundle, you get letters and forms and contracts and the class and a whole lot of things. I say this is not legal. We are not attorneys. I have the pleasure now of working with Erica instead of having to go against her. But Erica has wonderful contracts and paperwork and training. That's who does the training on our site. It's not me. It's Erica teaching it as an attorney. So definitely some things to look for, because the total loss thing keeps going. All right. We did a class recently on the unauthorized practice of law. Earlier in 2024, we did a class on what's the difference between steering and torturous interference. So pretty much all day long, from Monday through Friday, and even sometimes on the weekends, 4 or 5 shops a day will send me some sort of communication like this that says, this is the insurer and they're steering against me. I'm like, not really, right? Like, there's a difference between steering, torturous interference, and unauthorized practice of law. So this one came in. It was in my email this morning, and I thought, oh, this is not steering. This is actually a good kind of what appears to be a good example of torturous interference. And so I thought I would prop that up there and let you guys look at it. You need a business attorney. If you're not on a DRP, the insurers are going to do everything they can to get the vehicles to the DRP. That makes good business sense for them, and they should, right? They should be able to get cars, and they should be able to talk about their DRP. That's just part of the servicing of the claim. Like, our contractual agreement with a consumer cannot prevent them from doing their job. That is one of the limitations in a torturous interference. But a lot of times what you think is steering really isn't steering, but it could be one of the other two. So this one came in, and I thought, well, let's just pop it up here and let everybody see it and look at it. You're probably going to need to get a business attorney for your body shop. You need to sit down and talk with them about these 3 things. They need to research your state. They need to research and maybe learn on it. And then you guys need to have a plan. If you have a particular adjuster that just is all in on getting people not to come to your shop for whatever reason, you've had too many RTAs against them or whatever, you're probably going to have to take some steps, and you need to recognize some things, and you need to be able to kind of like catalog those. So what is torturous interference? Well, torturous interference is when one business has an agreement or a contract with a consumer, and then another business interferes with that contract in an improper way. Has to be improper, and it costs you money. Has to cost you money. So you have to have those 2 things. So in other words, like I said, the adjuster has the right to do their job. Just because the customer has chosen the body shop and signed a repair agreement, the adjuster still has to do their job. If you do it right, you don't cross the line. Do it wrong, like this email or this text. This is a text message. Do it wrong, like this text message, and you do cross the line. So some of the things that make, I guess, the check marks for what makes a case. This is what I used to teach my adjusters, to avoid these little bullets over here, right? Like, hey, do your job. Don't go in the weeds. So kind of like the first email from the State Farm person. Don't overrun. My dad used to say, don't let your alligator mouth override your canary hind end. Don't go too far, right? So this is what I used to teach my adjusters. So I just thought I'd throw it up here and look at it, because this is a great example. One, the plaintiff or the other party, so whether that was our insured or whether that was a third party claimant, do they have a contract with this third party? Do I know that there's a contract? Well, in the first sentence, we have received confirmation that your vehicle is at the shop. So I can't say I didn't know. So just by putting that as the first sentence, now I know that there was an agreement, whether that's a verbal agreement, which contracts can be verbal, or a written, which we hope you have, right? We hope you have a really good service agreement. All right, now the defendant, which I used to say, my adjuster, you, Bobby the adjuster, you knew about this at the same time of the alleged interference. So you were aware, like when you opened your mouth and said X, you knew there was no gray area, no nothing. Again, that first sentence really kind of gives us away. And then it says, you, Bobby the adjuster, interfered intentionally. There are some accidents that can happen, right? typically, let's say like you're a fence broker or whatever, that can happen. Then there is intent. So when we get to paragraph 2, there is definite intent to interfere. You don't want that car there, and you're doing everything to interfere with the confidence or the agreement that that customer has. So when you say once the repairs are complete, there will be an how do you know that? There will be an out-of-pocket expense. I didn't even write the estimate yet. You hadn't even wrote it. You say it's going to be 1 to 3 business days before you get there. So what do you know? There will be out-of-pocket expenses due to paint and materials and procedures. Wait, so you already are telling us you're not going to pay for procedures? Like, that's weird. And labor rate differences, right? These expenses, now you double dog down on it. These expenses can range between $500 to $1,000 just depending on the repair size. That's like what qualifies you to make those decisions. The shop's rates are higher in the market than other body shops and aren't able to match rates with Progressive. So the defendant interfered intentionally. You did, and then you overstepped it. Like you doubled down and started. We don't have an appraisal. We don't have anything. We don't know. May not have out of pocket expenses if there's a right to appraisal, right? Because it's Progressive, maybe. And then was the interference improper? Yes, that's beyond the scope of what your job is. So I agree that the adjuster needs to handle the claim. I agree that the adjuster still has the right to explain their DRP program. Doesn't matter. And it's okay to say, hey, just be aware there may be some differences. You might want to talk to the shop. We're going to do everything we can to work them out. That's you doing your job, right? So we said that one contract can't override the other party's business or duties that they have to do. And then this would have to lead to a breach. So if you check all of those boxes, then the last boxes have to be checked. It is because of what was said by the adjuster that the customer decides, they decide to breach the contract. In other words, they call the shop back and say, we're moving the car. We don't want you to repair it, whatever. And then you have to have a damage. So what happens? Well, I don't have the repair. The customer pulled the car from me. And so that's a financial loss of whatever those repairs would have been. And that's that difference with that. So the difference between steering, tortious interference, and unauthorized practice of law. So I thought it was interesting that this one opened up. Wanted to share that kind of as you tick through those. You have to decide, is this something I want to run by my attorney? Steering, sometimes I always tell people steering's so ambiguous that it's very hard to do anything with. And you basically, if you don't say we will not handle the claim, that's technically in most cases not steering. I can say I don't like the shop. The shop can say they don't like you. I mean, those things are not steering necessarily. So steering is very hard. But the others, when you can get something specific, then it's not necessarily something we're going to sue on, but it may give your attorney may review this and go, yeah, we've checked a lot of boxes here. How about we fire off a letter to this adjuster and say, hey man, don't do that again. Like just a friendly warning kind of thing. Like we need to figure this out. And a lot of times it works well. Sometimes it doesn't, but you have to know when this is something that needs to escalate up to your attorney so that you guys can talk about it and keep the little checkbook there. So that one was interesting. But wait, it got better last week. So I'm not really sure what's going on with Shelter. Like I have some relationships with that company. I really wish that they were better. I unfortunately look, there's some things you should ask a property damage specialist, and there's some things you should not ask a property damage specialist with that company. But this one was interesting. So here we are back on total losses again. So I'm telling you, total losses are going to become like the crux of everything. And then also I wanted to share this one because there's been a lot of talk lately about the law in Tennessee, and some insurance companies are trying to weaponize that. And this is a great example of it, of trying to weaponize it kind of stupidly. So shop called on this one. It's kind of as we walked through it. All right, we have a loss date of March 12th of 2024. Like it may have been before, but the vehicle does arrive at the shop as a non-drive on March 12th, 2024. Okay. March 12th, 2024. The vehicle's been at the shop for basically a year. like we're into April, so we're 360 something days of this vehicle being in the possession of the shop, and I'm thinking, how the hell did the car get there that long? And we've had this. So, um, but anyway, it is a consent tow versus non-consent. So in other words, the customer selected the body shop to be the one that repaired it and had the vehicle taken there on purpose. It was not non-drive on the side of the road. It was not picked up by a police department. It was not a call in for broke down request or nothing. This is the customer saying, take it to the shop. Okay. So the vehicle gets there on March 12th, 2024. In this letter, Shelter recently received a new storage request from you. So I will say that the shop tried to figure out a way to settle this claim. I'm gonna give him some kudos on that one, right? Like, this is definitely in the world of what would Larry do. This is not what Larry would do. So March 24th of 2025, we were over 365 days from the arrival at the shop to this communication. The shop sent in instead of asking for full storage all the way up for 360 something days, the shop sends in a revised bill. That bill contained 90 days of storage at $50 a day. Okay, all of you that follow me are like, $50 a day. I mean, mine would be at least double or triple that or whatever. So right off the bat, that seems like a very fair amount of value. And then here it goes. Shelter will follow the state statute regarding storage and will pay the 21 days of storage in accordance with Tennessee state statute. And then they quote them. All right. If you are not an attorney, you can't quote law. Doesn't do it. So body shop, same thing. Like I get shops all the time that want to quote things. The only sidebar kind of like difference of this is, as in New York, if you are a designated representative in the way that that law works, you can cite Regulation 64 and kind of, that stuff. But for the rest of us, we don't get to cite state statutes. We're not attorneys. We can't give legal advice. We cannot make legal interpretations. And in no way whatsoever should any adjuster be interpreting a state statute. Number one, I've read the Tennessee statute in full. Like, everybody likes to do this, where you see this 31-402, 31-403, 31-404. Everyone likes to pull out little segments and go, ha, this says I don't owe you. What they forget is that you have to take the totality of that statute. What was it intent? What was it? And then you need an attorney to interpret that for you. Because I have my own opinion after reading it. I still believe that that only applies to non-consent towing and storage facilities. So those are the people that are on the HP pickup list, that are on the call out list from local police department, that they're towing. They're not collision repair centers or service centers, because we have, I've published the Tesla thing from their service department, where when your car's ready, you get a text that says, if you're not there in 24 hours, they're going to charge you $125 a day storage for your vehicle sitting on the lot. Hell, they don't even want those cars on the lot to catch on fire. So there's a difference in interpretation. I truly believe that if this ever has attorneys review it, or it goes in front of a judge is going to agree that the Tennessee statute intent is for non-consent tow, and this does not apply to dealerships, collision repair centers, transmission shops, any automotive business that is consent. In other words, that the customer did that. But let's pretend that even if we were going to pretend that we felt that applied, let's think about it. That statute didn't go into effect until July 1st of 2024. So our adjuster here, who decided that they were going to interpret state law, look, folks, I was at Shelter for a while. There is no formalized legal training there. So I'm not sure why or how. And then I will also tell you this: if you're an adjuster and you're watching this, when a manager tells you to write the letter, it means they know they're screwed, right? Like, when they think they've got it, they have it come from either in-house counsel, or they'll have the letter sent from the outside counsel that's representing them. When they ask you to write this, it means it wasn't really checked, and you should probably ask a few more questions before you hit send on the email, right? Especially if you're writing it and sending it to something like let's say a property damage specialist. We'll use those terms loosely, right? But if you're sending it to somebody who's like editing it for you, and they're like, yeah, sounds good, go ahead and send it. If they don't want to send it themselves, there's a reason, right? But if we even thought that this was the way that this was supposed to be interpreted, you're not supposed to quote it anyway. You can make a settlement and say, this is all we're offering and we're demanding the money be returned. All of the quoting that you thought made you sound so smart probably shouldn't have been put in there at all. But then if we just think about it, right, if this statute didn't go into effect until July 1st, if anybody just wants to pull out a calendar and have a little fun right now, if you count the days between the date it arrived at the shop, which is agreed upon by everyone, right? March 12th to July 1st is how many days? So we're quoting something that went into effect after that time limit had already passed, or a vehicle that was in care, or a claim that had initiated prior to that statute going into effect. Like, that's the problem when you start thinking you get like really like I spend all day long looking at files, and attorneys will call and go, hey, look at this and talk to me about it from a claims perspective, right? I don't get to interpret the law, right? And I get to have lots of discussions about what you think, and I get to hear all kinds of things. I spent a lot of time getting sued, right? Insurance companies get sued a lot, and so you spend a lot of time with your inside counsel. You spend a lot of time with the big fancy firms that are representing you, and you hear them and you learn a lot. Um, I'm not going to quote this, right? And I'm not going to even give an opinion. If legal told me that, hey, you're not paying this, okay, we're not paying it. All of that extra stuff crossed the line. So that's actually unauthorized practice of law. If this shop or this consumer wanted to send in a complaint to the Tennessee Supreme Court, that letter alone is a conviction. But then what's even crazier is that what you're quoting, like it's a math problem. Like the date of loss and the date of arrival is before the statute goes into play. I I think first of all, the shop was nice. They didn't have to do this. This case comes down to a vehicle that came in that trying to order parts, and the parts would never come in. So the insurer is a little upset that says, can't believe, but it took them all this time. And then, they could get the part in, and we had to total the vehicle as customer service. Okay. That's your problem, not the shop's. Would I have liked to have seen a different like progress through this by the shop? Sure. I would have loved it. I would have loved to seen that. Right. Um, but technically, body shops don't make cars total losses. It's our job to keep ordering parts and keep trying to fix the car. It's your job to decide when you don't want to wait any longer, or you believe that it's unrealistic, or it's not a fiduciary and you want to total the car. The shop doesn't have any skin in that game. And then they don't do it for free because of all this time that took on. So I thought the shop's offer, I mean, they've had this vehicle for 360 something days. They asked for 90 days of storage, and they asked for tear down and some fees. There were some other things that were approved by the insurer. So it's an interesting case of just what's happening right now around total losses, and adjusters getting out over their skis, whether that's untrained supervisors over the top of them, whether that's untrained regional claims directors, whatever it is, but there's just this kind of a thing. So that letter alone, when I get something in there citing statutes, I'm like, unauthorized practice of law. So adjuster crossed the line. Like, I like a good fight. If you've watched and followed anything online, you know how much I like to fight and argue, right? It's my superpower. It's my hobby. I don't golf. I don't do whatever. But the hardest thing in claims was learning that that's not your role. Your role is just to take care of the customer and do the right thing. And then you do claims, and these other people do these other jobs, and staying in your lane, so to speak. And now it's so confused, and there's so little training. And there's this over sense of importance by adjusters and insurance companies. They think they have way more authority or control in this process, and that's partly our fault as repairers. You've allowed that illusion to continue, and you've inflated it in a lot of ways. So things to be wary of. So in other words, you got an example of what a possible torturous interference would look like. So you'd want to call your attorney and have a conversation with them. And then you'd want to, on this one, have your conversation with your attorney. One, how are we going to defend this? I also would probably write back and say that, well, now my offer's off the table and I want everything in full. I would change my bill. My offer of settlement was rejected, and so now we're going back to the original. But now the shop needs to have a conversation with their attorney, and it's a possibility that you can soften the settlement desire by reminding them that they stepped in it every now and then. So speaking of Erica again, Erica was really good at this. Like, different people would have to deal with those cases, and you get a little puffy. This happens to Mid Island, Larry and Mid Island a lot too. The adjuster that has to talk to them gets a little puffy, and when you keep talking and because you're mad and you want to prove your point, you'll say something stupid. All right, let's talk about the Collusion Collective. You've heard me say this a couple of times. There's the Google Drive that's out there that we're putting information in and sharing it. And Yanni's putting some stuff in there. But bottom line is that we have these companies. They're small companies. They're owned by some really cool people that I like, whether that's, Impactify and the management system, if it's Voltonic and that management system, and Tom, if it's Tim Briggs and Collision Edge, it's Yanni at Eagle, it's Derek at Crytek. There's all these little companies that are run by small entrepreneurs, not corporations. It's not your 3Ms and your whatever. And how do we all start kind of like working together? In other words, let's figure that out. And then there's some things that I want to do with this by in 2025. Good Lord, I'm losing track. I'm working right now to see if there's some ways that we can come up with some help around buying power and discounts, and for some of you small guys that are out there, just like a small business. So we all work together, whether, I'll call Yanni for a favor, I'll call Derek, I'll call Billy Lally, or, Larry's P&L consultants. We've been, Larry's not an employee of Collision Hub. He has his own business. Lang Engineering, all of us, Mark Olson has his business. So all of us have all worked together and been helpful to each other for 20 something years. Maybe we put some more formalization around it, and then maybe we can get some better benefits for shop. So be on the lookout over the next couple of months as the collective kind of looks to take some new shape, right? And hopefully we'll get some people to come to the table and kind of see the value in the very small independent shop. I do believe that's the future. The people that can pivot and can adapt very quickly to what's going on in the industry will do well. I think these big inflated box stores are going to have a problem as we continue to see repairables decline and everything. And labor becomes an issue, all of that stuff. So, I mean, if we can get some companies to come to the table and offer up some solutions that help the little guy, it's very hard to do it one at a time, like to find all these little guys across the country and help them. So if we can work as a collective and have all these people in there and kind of figure it out, I have no idea what that's going to look like or what that's even going to take. I've been asked to do a co-op thing for years and rebates. I have no idea how to do that. I don't even know where to start. But there's a lot of smart people out there. And hopefully we'll get a lot of people to come to the table and figure it out. If we don't, oh well. All right, let's go on a rant. I'm gonna find my soapbox and I'm gonna get on it right now, and I'm gonna have a really good discussion because several things happened this week that I don't want to say angered me, frustrated me, right? Like, I didn't have enough time to be angry, but frustrated me. And then I got a message from a friend in the industry whose daughter had wrote a paper, and I was reading. I didn't get the whole paper, but I got screenshots of like the first couple of pages. And to have a teenager who's the same age as my son write this reminded me of what my role as a woman in an industry, doesn't matter what industry you're in. And I know people go, it's a tradition. The automotive industry is a traditionally male dominated one. I think it's only male dominated because we've let it be male dominated, but I don't care what industry you're in. I'm reading that paper and going, I have a duty to be a pain in the ass. Like, and people listening are going, well, you're doing it really well. But I'm frustrated that more of you are not being a pain in the ass, right? Like I've listened to the stories of women in this industry for years. Not all of them have been great. So, few things. If you are a woman in this industry, I need you to stop being quiet. I need you to stop trying to get along. I need you to stop being everybody's friend. I need you to stop caring about what people think of you and do people like you, because we need new energy and new ideas in this industry. Like, we've let the sport coat guys with the white hair and the drink tickets run this thing into the ground. I mean, like, none of us are really happy with where we are right now, right? The industry's not super healthy, and we're not all making money hand over fist. but we keep having the same people pop up over and over. It's like Groundhog Day. Like a guy goes and ruins an industry or ruins a company, bankrupts them, and then poof, pops up at another company like, 30 days later, like everyone forgets that they bankrupted and can't, hold water in a glass, can't give a speech, can't run a business, but because they're a dude and they have a sports coat and they have a title and they used to play golf at all the industry events, let's just give them another job. If you are in a corporation, you should be having more women lead it. Like, let's just stop listening to the old guard because they haven't gotten us anywhere at all. So at the same time I got that, I got a message. Skills USA, the state competitions are taking place around the industry, around the country right now. And we had one state where all of the finishers in body and refinish, the top place finishers, were all women, all girls. And I thought, damn, that's cool, right? Like to go and win, and that's body, and that's paint, and that's estimating, and all the categories that are in Skills USA. And we have a state that's like, it's all women. So um, you are good at what you do. You are smart, and you don't have to apologize for it. And you don't have to worry about, is somebody going to be offended? Um, I, there was so there's a study, right? And we always talk about this. It doesn't matter my opinion, right? As a woman in the industry, you have a lot of opinions about things. But Harvard did a study. So if we want to go let all the old men at Harvard do a study to prove this, and success and likability. So people that are successful and well liked are positively correlated for men. But women that are successful are not liked. So there's a negative correlation. So if you're going to be a woman and be successful, yeah, people just aren't going to like you. And people are going to have a lot to say about you, but you've just got to get over that. You've got to get over worrying about hurting people's feelings and whether you're going to get invited to cocktail parties or get Christmas cards or whatever. Yeah, dudes aren't going to be happy. Like as soon as you start standing up, speaking your mind and doing your things, it's going to make them uncomfortable. And you've got to be comfortable with those people being comfortable. Harvard, it's called the Heidi versus Howard study. So if you want to go research it and look it up. So if you want to kind of see those things, I think one of the best examples I saw of it was this past week. There's a dude, right? Used to work for one of the OEs. Went on an MSO's page on LinkedIn and chastised them, like on their own page. Like I get kind of mad and I occasionally put Google eyes and go, wait, did you just post what I just think you posted? But this guy goes on there and openly chastises this OE, and you should do better than whatever. No one had a problem with it. No one blinked. He got little celebration claps and little hearts and whatever. No one had a problem with it. Um, if I'd have done it, oh my God, the whole world would have fallen apart, right? The MSOs would have been calling everybody, trying to, figuring out who they could have yelled at or whatever and taking it personal. But this guy, because he was a man in the industry, no one blinked an eye or batted an eye about it, which I just thought, God, that's just really fascinating, right? Like you can have two people say the exact same things, and one's a villain and one's a hero. And that comes back to the Heidi and Howard survey. So it's real out there. So what does all that mean? One, by math, the population numbers, the birth numbers, et cetera, this industry doesn't survive without women anyway. Some of the smartest people I know in this, well, not some, all of the smartest people I know in this industry are women. They should be running companies without saying they're sorry, but most of them spend most of their time with somebody that's the face of a company, that's a dude, and they're the ones doing all the hard work and the heavy lifting, but they're not getting any credit. That guy's getting the big salary, he's taking the vacations, he's doing the victory laps around the industry. I just would love, I think we would fix everything if all the women in this industry would just kind of, what is it? Take your place. I like that Maya Angelou poem, Take Your Place, right? So best places to take your place, right? All right. I'm not in Win. I was in Win. I haven't been in Win in a long time. I think you need support. I think you need to see people that look like you. Not everybody is as proud or in love with herself as much as I am. So I totally get that. But you need to make friends. You need to see people that looks like you. You need to have a support group. You need to have people to bounce things off of. All of those things. So the Women's Industry Network Conference will be in May. It is in Orlando. So from May 5th through the 7th, if you've never been, if you're a woman in this industry, or you have a daughter that's in this industry or whatever, in any capacity, whether you're working for a rental car agency, or you're at a job or selling paint, or you're in a body shop, or you're at an insurance company, you probably need to go check out Win, right? Like, get down there, get around all of those. There are some powerhouses that are in Win. And we're talking about, like, Fortune 5 companies. You'll meet some incredible people. You can get to see a reference. I just wish a lot of those women would stop apologizing as well and trying to be liked. I think Win should be running the world. So yeah, get yourself to the Win conference, and maybe make a commitment to being a little bit more outspoken, and not trying to be liked or worry about if we're hurting somebody's feelings, right? I like it when I hurt somebody's feelings. It makes me happy. Okay. All right. Interesting development. Solera keeps kind of spiraling. So the S&P cut Solera's credit rating, and literally, it's not me making it up. They've rated them as junk. Um, that's kind of correlated with last week. You heard people posting about State Farm. Was State Farm leaving Links, and were they going to be going to Safe Flight? Links is a company that is owned by Solera. It's one of the, I don't know, one of the only, I want to say, revenue producing. I don't know, but Links was working. I don't know. But I think you see more and more insurers kind of worried about what the future of that brand is in the United States. And whether that played a factor in State Farm pulling that business from Links and sending it over to Safe Flight. The glass shops are not happy about it. But if you are, if your business relies on something that is owned by Solera, start, just double check and make sure you're good. That's like my best advice to everybody. I've used the captor estimate. I don't use it anymore, but I've used that captor estimating system, and they've got some really cool products around Vindicode and some other things. But if your business is relying on that, just pay attention to what's going on over there. Have some conversations with them. Make sure that you're not in a position where a sudden disruption or departure would be catastrophic to your business. So think about just taking care of that. All right, my favorite people are back in the middle. Like, I feel like, what was that movie? I Just Can't Quit You, right? So here's what happens in public relations, right? So some people think that you can improve your reputation by talking. Sometimes you should just shut up and move on, right? Especially if it's an insurer that's driving you, or if it's an insurer's mandate of you that's driving you. It doesn't necessarily require you to talk. I think that there's some belief that the more we talk, maybe they're not worried about shops liking them, right? So this webinar took place. um, the problem is that if a month or so ago you put out a statement that says for 2 years you weren't asking about or performing calibrations, maybe fully, right? Whether we want to say who's at fault for that, right? Some people want to say that the shop should have known it wasn't happening because there was empty written on the invoice. But then you want shops to believe that your data, the data that you're sharing with insurers, is going to help them. It's going to make things easier. That just doesn't make any sense at all. Like, hey, you ever get in a fight with like a relative, like, or a spouse or your parents or whatever, and sometimes you just go, you know what? I just need you to leave me alone for like a day or so and let me like get over being mad. And I feel like that's probably the best advice Aztec could get right now, is like, you should just be really quiet for maybe like 3, 4, 5 months, right? Like, I started getting emails that all of customer service in the United States got laid off, and all of customer service is now going to Mexico. And so I'm thinking, you got some things you probably could be working on, right? Like, not talking to the body shop business right now. There's there's things like, just let everybody take a breather, because about the time that things start to sunset and kind of the industry moves on to a new news cycle, you guys try to do a press conference about something, or you do a PR move, host a webinar, or you're going to try to sponsor an event or whatever, and it just doesn't work. But the point about that is also body shops. hold your associations and everyone around you accountable. So when there's a vendor in the market that you believe is doing things that are harmful to your business, don't let them sponsor events or be on panels or be keynote speakers or have their logo somewhere and be able to brag that they're a sponsor of this association or whatever. Like, like your association, your trade shows, your whatever should not be for sale. Like those that aren't good performers, good behaviors in the market, good stewards of your business shouldn't be able to buy their way into things. So when you see logos and you see sponsored by or presented by or whatever, kind of like being a woman in the industry, speak up, right? Like hold those people accountable. Refuse to do the events, refuse to go, ask them to take, to reject that as a sponsor or whatever. But, everybody was online complaining about this. And I've watched that logo pop up on a couple of events lately. And I went, you guys really have no idea that you're for sale in a lot of ways. So, but this probably is not going to help. But yeah, a month ago you told us you kind of weren't following your own thing, saying what needed to be done to the car. And then now you want us to trust the data you're sharing with insurers. So you can run on Repair Driven News and you can see that. I'm sure there's a replay to that webinar. I didn't even want to watch it. It wasn't worth it. So I read through the thing and I was, listening, reading everybody's comments online and thought, this is just crazy that I think there's a belief that we body shops don't know and that, just be quiet and let it happen kind of thing. Like we'll just buy some more sponsorships and we'll just participate in some more events and we'll just do these things. And eventually the insurers will just all come over to our side of the table and then the body shops will give in. They'll stop fighting because they don't have the guts to fight the insurer. So, yeah, what you allow to happen will not just continue, it will get worse. So then along those lines, about the same time, I got this post. And I thought, well, that's just really timing and interesting. So I wanted to kind of talk about it. This was a calibration company that had posted that the vehicle had come in to them because they couldn't, the previous person, they didn't say whether that was the shop trying to do it internally or if it was a mobile guy, could not get it to calibrate. And so when it came in, the first thing, obviously is you start from the foundation up. So we always tell people the body of the vehicle is the foundation of the math, right? There's a formula, it's geometry, and it's a whole bunch of crap that I can't do. I barely passed college algebra, right? But there's this formula that has to take place that these things must be true. And then if these things are true, then this algorithm works, and then therefore these ADAS systems will work. So really the body work. Like is the structure correct? Is the frame right? Are the body panels in the right place? Because a lot of us will just like measure the underbody and goes good, and then we forget that there's this whole, it's called a unibody for a reason, right? So this second place that had it, the first thing they did was take the bumper cover off, and look what they found. This was what the TRP shop had returned to the customer as repaired. This was, hey, we're good. Just has to go through calibration and call the customer to come and get it. So a lot of people go, oh, that vent, that's nothing. That's just a cosmetic piece, and we're going to put the bumper over it. Nobody's going to see it. But all of that body damage that's in the area of where that sensor was mounted, oh, they're not going to see that either. We're just going to throw that. But because the sensor's not in the right place, the vehicle wouldn't calibrate. And that brings to mind, I think for the insurers, I 100% understand the need to put some bookends around scanning and calibration. I totally get why you would want to do that. But this is the reality of what we're dealing with. And so when you have something that's $15 for a scan and 0.3 or whatever, or you have this menu pricing and what you are and aren't going to pay for calibrations, the fortunate thing here is that I am grateful that the first calibration company that had this, that couldn't get it to calibrate, didn't just zero out and say screw it and charge for it and move on. That they went and got another opinion, took it to a designated calibration, a fixed ops type place, someone with a more advanced skill or whatever, and found this out. I'm grateful for that. I am. My fear, though, is if we think about it, if as an insurer, I believed that this stuff could be done remotely. In other words, this Aztec menu pricing thing that they have or whatever. And I know that ProTech and Elite Tech and a lot of other people that are these mobile guys that come to your shop. Um, if we believed that was possible, this is a great example of why it's not. I remember one time talking to one of the mobile companies that's associated with an MSO, and they had told me about 40% of what comes to them can't calibrate because it has a structural problem. Not necessarily like we say structural, everybody thinks frame, but panels are still off, like that whole unibody thing. It's top to bottom, the vehicle has to be right. The people that are trying to do this in-house, body shops that are doing the in-house things, would they take the extra steps, tear it down, and go, hey, we have to re-repair this car, and not try to push it out for delivery on a Friday? If you're the mobile guy and you're trying to calibrate this inside the shop and they're trying to push it out on Friday, do you have the ability to stop and say, hey, this can't go, you've got to redo it? If you are that guy, is there some sort of form that you should supply the shop so that legally you can say, we said this car couldn't deliver? I don't know. All kinds of things coming up. Who takes ownership of a failed calibration? And are we creating inside the shop an environment that allows for these things to stop and not deliver? Or are we trying to create this environment where, because we're paying so little, that people will go, it's not worth it, just clear the damn codes and move on and let's deliver the car? That's my fear. Like, the cheaper you make something, the less desire there is to do it right. The more it's like, you're not paying me enough to figure this out. You didn't pay me enough to re R&I this bumper, to go back and look at it, to measure the brackets, to figure out what's wrong. Um, I just don't. I mean, I don't know any way forward that we don't have a lot of fixed operations. Some of these body shops aren't capable of having these. You look at how far away this target has to be, and you have to have a solid colored floor and all those things. Like, there's just not a lot of shops that have the ability to do this, or the space. Can't do this outside. Um, so I think we have to start having some really good conversations about who's actually on that failed calibration, and are we creating a system that is incentivized to not do it properly? And that's going to be dangerous, because if I don't paint the car correctly, but if I don't do calibrations correctly, that really affects someone's life. Okay. Um, just a few little trivial things to finish out so we can get everybody going on their Monday. This was interesting. It popped up last week and I was reading the notes, and I was so glad that a bunch of people noticed it. So just don't believe the news. I mean, there's so much in this industry that's press release. It's not news. It's companies that write these press releases that send them out on the PR newswire in hopes that somebody will pick it up like a story. And it's advertorial. It's advertisement for them. It's them trying to, like, either be a thought leader or actually sell a product. So it was really interesting that these two popped at the same time. Story one is the PNC industry had a record underwriting, net underwriting, so not gross, a net underwriting profit of 22.9 billion in 2024. So the story of, we ain't making any money. And then there's this 22.9 billion, that's huge, right? And then the very next story over the top of it that published at the same time is a company called Insurify, which is a broker. Like, they shop policies. So obviously this was an advertorial thing. Full coverage insurance is projected to increase by 8%, including 3% of that from tariffs. So there's a scare tactic to get you to click. And maybe this said tariffs on Canada and Mexico could increase car insurance 60% faster, says a new report by Insurify. So just be careful what you read, and look for the source, and ask yourself, is this news, or is this somebody trying to sell me something, or thought control me so that I think a certain way or I want to use their product? News sometimes gets slow, and everyone will pick up off a news wire and copy and paste a story without kind of reading through it. That happens in this industry a lot. So particularly because everybody wants to be a thought leader these days. So be very careful where you get your news source from, and call it critical thinking, have very critical thinking skills about what people are showing you. So Progressive, let's talk about them again. They settled a big lawsuit. Kind of the news came out. They settled a lawsuit for 13.8 million. Please go back on Repair Driven News and read this. 13.5 of that is just in attorney's fees. And that represents 7 plaintiffs. So when you look at how fast they settled this for such a low number of whatever, um, I think they were well aware that there was that they didn't want this to go on much longer, right? You didn't want more plaintiffs to be found. You didn't want a lot of more discovery or whatever to take place. So um, typically these things take years. 21 to 25 is in the world of legal is not that very long, but that's an interesting read when you read through it. I think over almost like every year, an insurer is losing a lawsuit over how they handle total losses. Um, that which goes back to, if we think about that Replevin and State Farm saying that they looked it up in a guide provided by CCC. Just some interesting things, how fast they did that one. And then when you look at that and think of how quickly they were willing to pay out that amount of money for 7 people means there was probably something there that they were worried about getting out. All right. I told you guys that I would tell you a little bit about what had happened. So this week for me, took some days off for spring break, and we're still on the football tour. I've got a kid that's a 4-star recruit, and we're going all over the country. And we were fortunate enough, we have offers from the national champs from Ohio State, and then from the runner-up Notre Dame. And visiting those programs to me is always interesting. When you're around coaches, a couple of years ago, before Saban quit, we had a chance to get an offer and go down and spend time with Nick Saban. And I thought, oh my God, it's the Aflac. I just don't say Aflac in front of this guy, right? Like, but when you're around people that are such high performers like that, you always wonder, well, what can I take away? And it's not that I'm going to interrupt they're there to talk to my kid about football, but you're gonna try to pick up those nuggets as you go. Well, here's what I thought was interesting. So whether it was Ryan Day or Marcus Freeman, right? These are 2 great coaches, highest pinnacle of their trade, of their craft, of what they do. One wins a national championship, one loses. And what was very interesting to me is that they both really said the same thing. Win or lose, whether you win the national championship or you lose the national championship, the next day we're both in the same place. So the next day it's start over and get ready for the next season. So you don't really even get like a full 24 hours to take a victory lap, right? You're thinking about recruiting and getting in new players and what's the next season going to look like and who's my quarterback going to be and all those things. And so here's the guy that had won it who says, yeah, we won the national championship, but that's kind of expected. And that's what we're supposed to do every year. And the next day I had to come in this office and start thinking about how are we going to do it in 2025, right? Or 2026. And then the guy that lost it, same thing. Don't have really a lot of time to think about it. I had to come in here the next day and figure out how we're going to, put together a team and make another run for next year. And I thought what was great about that is that kind of in our business, win or lose, the next day is the same. So I can have a great day and I can do something really cool and I can make an insurance company call back and apologize and pay me. And then the next day I just have to start all over again. Nothing that from that day before really affects the next day. So same as if I take a loss, something happens, I review a file and I have to call the shop back and go, hey, you probably already settled this. You probably ought to take less just to get out of it. And then we need to think about putting some new things in place so that this doesn't happen again. You can take a loss and the next day you're in the same place. So every day you get a chance to just start over, and every day you're chasing a championship, so to speak. And I think for shops, that's a really good perspective because a lot of us, we have more bad days than we have good days. That's just being in this business. I think whether you're a jobber or you're, selling sandpaper or you're a paint company or whatever, we have a lot more bad days than we do good days these days here. And if you string together too many of the bad days, you start to think, well, why am I even doing this anymore? And maybe I'll sell my shop, or maybe I'll go get a hot, Larry likes to say he's going to get a hot dog stand. Um, you, it's win or lose, right? The winner and the loser start the next day in the exact same position. So if you can just give yourself that perspective and just start over every day and do everything you can today to win, and then come in tomorrow and start over and do everything you can that day. And then if just that one day at a time, mentality, um, that's how we get through these next 2 years. They're going to be crazy. The insurers are going to get harder to deal with, not because they're mean, but because that's what happens when you don't train people. Um, Repairability, available repairs are going to be less as claim counts continue to decrease. There'll be some more contraction in the market. There may be some upending in some of the large MSO networks, but there's going to feel like all these things that happen are going to make it hard to come in the next day. So I'm going to think about what Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman both said, because I just found it funny. I don't want to say funny, but it was an aha moment. Here's the guy that should be on top of the world as the winner. And here's the guy that should be frustrated because you got so close and lost. But both of them were saying the exact same things. And I think that's why they are winners. I think that's why they build winning programs year over year, is because they understand they come in the next day, you start over, win or lose. We all start tomorrow in the same place. And so tomorrow, no matter what happens today, you're just going to start all over again. But I hope you have a really good Monday. I'm going to have a good time helping with all these stolen car reports and keeping track of what's going on. I hope that there gets to be some sort of charges, but I imagine it'll just be a polite return of the property. But it's going to shake up some things. It makes me giggle a little bit. If you run into things and you got questions, well, that's what we're here for. If you are part of our 20 group and you're a member, you get to send me this stuff and have me work with you through it through real time, or Larry or Jason or Rachel or any of the people on our team. We're happy to like jump in there with you when it's fresh and help you through it. If you want to join our class next or in April, so tomorrow's April Fools. If you want to join our class on total losses and kind of abandonment, Replevin, constructive total loss, kind of to all of that thing, then reach out to Melanie. She's back. I haven't seen her yet, but we know she's back in country, so they allowed her back in. Reach out to Melanie. Anything that you questions, we'll do what we can for you. And get ready for a good year. So everybody have a great last day of March, and we'll see you next Monday on Coffee Talk. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.